You're listening to By the Way, a podcast about contemporary art news. My name is Eric. I'm an artist and an art professional here in Stockholm.
And my name is Ando. I am a podcaster and an artist here in Copenhagen.
And today we're talking about maybe having to sell your daughter into slavery to pay the bills. How about we get started? All right. So normally for some of our new listeners, we would be presenting, or I typically would be presenting two stories to Ando and getting his reaction. Today, I think this one has probably enough legs, so I'm going to go with one.
Okay.
This is actually a story that you sent me a link to, but you promised you weren't going to read it and keep yourself ignorant, so hopefully you have.
You know what's hilarious is I actually don't even remember what that was. I remember I sent it to you and I remember being like, this is a good story. And I honestly do not remember what it was.
So you play stupid very well then. No, so the story that you sent me that you don't remember is about Documenta 14. So this is one that is, for some reason, just keeps sticking in the headlines right now. Documenta is a contemporary art exhibition that's started in 1955, and it's realized every 5 years in Kassel, Germany. This past year, so Documenta 14, was curated by a Polish curator named Adam Simczyk. I probably butchered it because I don't speak Polish, but hey. It was decided to hold the exhibition as well in Athens, Greece. So for the first time, it was a multiple city type of event. Mm-hmm. And they tried to actually expand it in a 50-50 type of way. I think they've done a couple satellites, but very small.
Right.
The reason that they wanted to expand to Greece, and specifically Athens, is they wanted to call attention to the failings of the capitalist system that allowed Greece to nearly bankrupt itself. And only after doing so, that they nearly bankrupted themselves, they needed a bank bailout to recover as a country. And it's about a decade later, and they still haven't completely recovered yet.
Oh, the foreshadowing is sweet.
Oh, yeah, right? Irony. So a few weeks ago, there was a German local newspaper that reported that Documenta blew through its allotted budget. You want to guess what the budget for Documenta was, by chance?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question because I do not remember. I would say the allotted budget for Documenta is 100 million euros.
Oh, all right. You're more generous than they were. The council or whoever they gave it. It was a 44 million US dollars. So, and the problem was that they actually overspent by nearly 20%. So about $8.5 million. It's important also to note at this point that the way that Documenta is set up, that the city of Kassel and the German state of Hesse, where Kassel is, are shareholders in the entity that is Documenta. So they're on the hook for everything. So after the news broke by this German newspaper that there was dramatic overspending, the blame game started, and it's kind of murky on who is to blame for what. But the general thing that you can say is absolutely poor management and oversight can be blamed for essentially or getting really darn close to destroying Documenta and any future Documentas because of this.
And it bears mentioning that Documenta is a very important event in the art world.
Yeah, it's known because they have big budgets. They do big projects that can't usually be realized without an institution like Documenta. Mm-hmm. They take in a bunch of artists from all over the world.
They commission a lot of works.
Absolutely. And they give the artists a lot of freedoms that typically artists can't afford or get the opportunity to do. Now, with that being said, they have got criticism in the last few years. Jerry Saltz was one that pointed this out, that I think this was in the last, or maybe it was two reiterations of it ago, that the Documenta talks about how well they spread and reach and bring in artists that might be underrepresented or don't have gallery representation at all. But he noticed that something like 20 or something of the artists out of the roughly, let's say, 200 came from one gallery in New York. So, yeah.
There's always something.
Yeah, so there's mission statements, and then there's actual like execution as well. So
sure, but that's the art world. That is, yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, and this overspending nearly bankrupt the fair, and just to put this in context, they overspent by $8.5 million. Now there's a Canadian art fair that in 2016 they overspent by $200,000, and obviously they're a smaller fair, and that's why 200,000 is a much bigger deal. But they have canceled the 2018 biennial fair of this because of that overspending. They can't make up for those losses now, and that fair may not ever happen again just by that percentage.
Right, it's going to be twice as hard to get that off the ground after canceling one of them.
Absolutely. And I would actually at this point tell any of the listeners that are interested to listen to your episodes of the Chart podcast that you did of the Chart Art Fair in Copenhagen. That was your intro to Chart. I don't know if you remember what episode was that, about 114 or 108?
No, it's episode 104, I think.
104. Okay. Yeah. See, 114, because in that you talk about the structure in which Chart is set up, and I think that's very unique that you pointed out that they're a not-for-profit, and any shortfalls are made up by the three essentially owners of Chart, and any windfalls are automatically reinvested as a cushion to the next one to hopefully avoid the shortcomings. So
yeah, the five owners, but yeah.
Oh, is it five? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
But yeah, and I think that as I become more and more aware of how the art world functions, these budgeting things really start to become very political. It's interesting, as a person who is trying to make a living in the art world, there's such an onus on doing things for free that I'm starting to realize, wait, some of these places have a quite large operational budget. And the thing that happens is, of course, you can blow through 8 million extra in no time. I understand that. But, no matter what the budget is, it's a matter of percentages and just keeping an eye on it, right? I mean...
Absolutely. And just knowing it's just basic management, knowing what you have, what your costs are going to be. If you're in and out, if you can't balance the books, that's a part of a successful exhibition. It's not just what is given visually to the audience that comes. If you can't do something successfully on budget, you can't do it again. So it's actually harmful in the long term, because it's like,
right.
It's like a 16-year-old cashing their first work check and going out and spending all of it at Taco Bell instead of, I don't know, putting $20 away in the bank so that, later in the year they can go up skiing or something like that.
Well, worse than that, they not only spent their whole check at Taco Bell, they also just spent half of Daddy's check over at the shoe store. So now Daddy's pissed off.
Oh, and then they have to go to the doctor because they just ate Taco Bell. So.
But I mean, it seems like, well, okay. So now the blame game has started, right?
Yeah. So
let me jump. Whose head is going to roll?
Well, so there's the blame game. It mostly lies right now at this point on two groups. There's the curatorial team that is led by Adam Simchick, and I think, let's say there's right around 12, 15 people that would kind of be at the core of that, as well as this one. I don't think this guy's going to get out of this one scot-free, is the mayor of Kassel, because he is at the end of his kind of term. He's going to be retiring and leaving. And for a part of his legacy, he thought, yeah, whatever, I'll approve this. Big. I'll approve it, exactly, and thought that was okay. So he actually, on the political side, you talked about politics getting into this all the time. He thought he could use this as a little feather in his hat on the way out of office.
Does not appear to be the case.
Nope. It's going to actually be the skid mark in the underwear at the end of his career instead.
But the thing is, okay, I always have questions like this whenever a state institution or a public run fuck up happens.
Mm-hmm.
who signed off on the budget. Because if the curatorial team said, look, we need 8 mil, and some guy was like, killer, here's 8 mil, don't even worry about it, then it's not their problem, right?
Yeah, so in this case, the way that I understand it is you have the board members of Documenta that were essentially using the last Documenta budget to kind of go off of. Mm-hmm. And then they might have allocated, fiddled a little here or there. They then allocated that money. Then the curatorial team was brought in after.
Right, so they're not in charge of the final budget. They're not in charge of the final to work with.
Exactly. And so that's where the curatorial team is then responsible to follow the numbers. They might have presented some stuff along the way and said, hey, we might need an extra, 4% here or a little 10% there on a particular part over this 5-year, period between exhibitions. But ultimately, the board members gave them a budget to start with to work within. The curatorial group are supposed to, foresee complications and costs and come in below those like a contractor building a building. And if they can't, they need to ask for that money so it can be, allocated prior. And, most things do go over budget. That's not a surprise. But when you're going 20% over budget, that's the big thing. The other part that makes it kind of a scandalous type of thing or such a problem is, like I said at the very beginning, remember who the part of the shareholders are. It's the city of Kassel and the state of Hassa. So this is where the irony comes back as well. Remember the Greece part, the Athens, Greece, the big bailouts. The city, so the taxpayers have had to come in and bail out Documenta to keep it open through the duration of its exhibition period. And they are the ones online now to the creditors, and they are the ones that are saying Documenta is liquid enough to continue, and that they'll receive the rest of their debts. I think the city of Kassel or the state of Hassa put up 3.5 million euros of towards the debt.
I think that's hilarious that they had to go hat in hand and say, look, we made an ambitious fair looking at the systematic financial problems with public institutions in a country, and our own systematic financial issues caused us to lose 8 million euros while doing this fair.
Exactly. That's the great part. Then so let's see. One issue is that is very strange too, I find, is that there was a blame of also lack of revenue on this whole project. So the income from the project. And one thing is they had all these visitors, but in Kassel they charged people. In Athens it was free. And so there was 850,000 visitors to Kassel and 330,000 to Athens. Even if they charged them €5 a pop, you're sitting pretty darn nice. You're not going, you're not blowing through your budget as much.
Right, it's 1.5 million right there in ticket sales.
Exactly, and that's at €5, and we know €5 is way too cheap. So,
but I mean, again, that should have been budgeted. They knew they can have some sort of revenue projection based off of ticket sales, right? I mean,
but this is the funny part. The curators are trying to make this statement about capitalism. So that's why it was free.
You still have to make a fucking budget, though.
Absolutely. You still have to remember things cost. Even in a socialist, communist society, money makes the world go round. You gotta have your ingoing and your outgoing. They have to match up. If not,
all those curators got paid. Everybody got paid.
The head curator, Adam Simchik, he actually, I saw, received right around 100,000 euros per year in his role. So let's just say, and he's the head one, everybody makes a little less than him. His team is 10 to 15 people. Right there, you're looking at, let's just call it right there, €1 million in salary over a 4-year period.
But I mean, I for the record, I don't think that's a problem. It all goes back to the fact that they use money they didn't have. That's the problem.
Oh, sure, yeah. And being you and me in the arts, I think people need to get paid a living wage and a competitive salary.
And people work their fucking asses off. There's no doubt about it that putting together Documenta has to be one of the most insane, gnarly, hardest jobs ever.
Oh, for sure. So, yeah, I'm not complaining about the salary, but you just look at the salaries and you're like, okay, these guys are getting paid very well.
They're getting paid enough to keep that motherfucker on budget.
Yeah, to give a shit.
Yeah.
So,
but who's gonna so it's unclear who's gonna eat it at this point.
Yeah, most likely it's going to be the taxpayers.
Right. They always are the ones who eat it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the curatorial team also tried to make the claim that they brought in more people into the city. So the cultural value that they added is okay for the extra expenditures. And it's like,
right,
well,
which that's true aside from the extra expenditures part.
If you're in the arts, but if you're somebody who doesn't go see art, doesn't care about art, cultural value is crap. Yeah. That's like paying me in Monopoly money.
Well, it does bring actual taxpayer money. I'm a believer that culture brings tourism and people sleeping in hotels and food on plates, etc.
It absolutely does. So I just don't think they should put all their eggs in that basket of we bring so much cultural value and be all pompous like that. I think
it's hard to come at someone who you just used their money with that. I mean, the question to me, is this going to have political ramifications? Because obviously there has to be some sort of public acceptance to use the money on something like this. And as much as we know that Documenta is an important event, you're right. The average auto mechanic probably thinks it's a bunch of fucking ninnies coming to town to blow each other, and then somehow his tax money is used on that.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I'm trying to, is I come from a working class background. I didn't grow up in the arts, so I know when I hear remarks from family members. So, and this is one of those cases I'm kind of thinking, yeah,
it doesn't look good.
So I just also want to tell you a couple of the unexpected costs that they accrued, which you should have been able to see. That's kind of funny. Is they had all this artwork in Athens, Greece during the summertime. All the artwork needs to be climate controlled, and nobody really expected the amount of AC and the electric bills. So it sounds like the electric bills from the Athens side of this project was a huge surprise, meaning it's always taking place in Castle. They have those predicted variables are not so variable when you do it in a new city.
So fucking hot in Greece this summer.
Yeah, exactly. So I think they were saying on average is right around 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So let's call that 39 to
36, 37 degrees.
37
on average. It was well over 40 for a good period of time.
Exactly. So that was a huge part. There was also a statement about shipping costs, and I think in the news article they said that they have a report that one artwork costs up to six figures, so in the $100,000 range to ship, which is absurd. Having dealt with enough shipping issues myself, I know that you can ship a ship for $100,000. I mean,
yeah.
And then there was one Canadian artist who actually spoke out in saying that she shipped a marble tent, like a kind of a full-size tent made out of marble from Canada to I don't know if it was in Athens or in Castle. It doesn't really matter too much on this, but it was right around $8,000 and the Canadian Art Council paid for it. So there was 200 plus artists, right around 250 artists, and I would imagine that a majority received some type of funding in which transport was covered. So there's a lot, I think, of money missing in this.
$100,000 for shipping is for one artwork.
That's what they said.
That does sound a little iffy. I mean, but they won't tell you which artwork or what the conditions were or anything like that?
Not in this. It wasn't. It was kind of a buried line and in the tail end of an article, which I'll we'll have links to in the podcast. So you can go look at all of this. It's on a handful of websites. eFlux has some of the best descriptions on what happened. They have a letter also from the curators to kind of the public stating their position. There's also been another letter that came from the artists. But yeah, so I don't know if you want to add anything else to this or have any other smart-ass remarks that you just want to spew.
No, but the Schadenfreude is particularly delicious on this one. I'll wrap it up with that's my final comment on that one.
Schadenfreude, yeah.
Thanks for listening to this episode of By the Way. We appreciate you coming here. We're just getting started, so be sure to check us out on the Facebook, the Instagrams, the Twitters, the Friendsters, the MySpaces, the local bulletin board at your cafe, etc., etc.
Updates coming all the time on your BlueBerry,
exactly.
And your Nokia phone.
BlueBerry, you mean BlackBerry?
Oh, BlueBerry, BlackBerry, yeah.
That's how long it's been. And we'd also like to ask you to do us a favor. We really want to get the word out there, so please tell friends who are interested in arts, put it on your social medias. We'd really appreciate it. We want to get our listener numbers up here right from the get-go.
The best way to help us out is actually go into iTunes and write the reviews. Reviews on iTunes are the currency of podcasts right now.
Give us a 5 stars, homie.
Homies out there. Look forward to talking to you guys in about 2 weeks, hopefully with some new news.
Cool. Thanks for checking in. See you next time.
All right. Bye.